Divrei Torah tonight. Leiloi Nishmas, Phila Mandel, Ephraim Yitzhak ben Shlomo Aryeh, Olav Shalom, as well as Harry M. Joseph Tzvi ben Moshe, Olav Shalom. The Heilige Neshama should be zochet to a tremendous and continuous aliyah in Neshama Gan Eden Shamayla Mechoyel Achoyel. I want to thank as well Lila Nit and Aryeh Sobol sponsoring this week. 15-minute shiur in memory of his grandfather, Rabbi Aryeh's grandfather, Yido ben Avram, Olav Shalom, on his yahrzeit. Again, the Heilige Neshama should be zachet to a tremendous and continuous aliyah in Neshama and Gan Eden Shamayla La'ela Ula'ela. We turn with Siyata D'Shmaya to the opening, a narrative of this week's Parsha, Parshas Tazria. And right at the outset, Dabra Bnei Soleimar Isha Ki Sasriya V'Yalda Zocher. What happens? She produces the child, and then writes the Torah Kedosha V'Yom Hashmini Ayimo B'Sor Laso. On the 8th day, the child will have a bris milah. We can't ignore the obvious connection and the association to the V'Yom Hashmini that we just read about. Nothing's coincidental, of course, and we turn back to the opening, a narrative in Parsha Shmini, the only Parsha in all Chamisha Chumshei Torah that, interestingly enough, is named for a number. And there, what did we read? Vahi B'Yom Hashmini Kara Moshe Li'Aaron U'Labanav. So how can we perhaps approach the fact that Parsha Shmini, named for the fact that the Torah began, that reading Vahi B'Yom Hashmini, and now we encounter just 1 week later those precise two words, B'Yom Hashmini, or B'Yom Hashmini Yimom Asar Alaso. On the 8th day, the child will have a bris milah. What's the connection? So perhaps, with Siyata D'Shmaya, one could be Matzia, one could suggest the following approach. We discussed in the past how clearly Dvarim Gedolah Meinam Mikra, it's the only parsha that's named for a number. That's the parsha we're in. We have the Cheit of Nadav and Avihu. And yes, the explanations abound what precisely was the nature of their Cheit. But the common denominator that's gleaned l'chayr is one of, they went beyond their border. They went michutz legevul. And at the end of the day, you read the Psukim in the Chumash, they went to Lefnai v'Lefnim, to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and they were makar v'neish Zora wa'asher lo tziva. The Eibishter didn't tell us to do it, it doesn't matter. Unrestrained, unfettered, a boundless love, unbelievable, Avos Hashem. Writes Rav Gedal Yeshua Nor Gedayo, writes L'Slan Mareb and Asiva Shalom, and others as well. What really was their Cheit, the underpinnings of the Cheit of Nadav and Avihu? It was all about, we're driven, the thrust that propels us is that of an unbridled, unfettered, unrestrained Amos Hashem. And we want to go so close, we want to go L'Fnai v'Lefnim. Getting married, who needs to get married? One of the reasons we get married, and the Keva to Soviv Gover, Yavamas Sabach Beis of Beis, Amisho in Luisha, Shoroi below, Ashleim Simcha Choma, one of the 6 things. The Gemara relates in Yavamas is that you're lacking a Choma, the wall to keep you in place. Isha Schayel. At the end of Mishlei, Perek Lamed Aleph, Isha Yiras Hashem Yitasalo. The Zohar, the Duchra is all about Ava, is about Chesed, is about being Mashpia, being a Meitiv, being a Nosein. What's the role of the Nekeva? To be the Choma, Yira, to lock the husband in place, to symbolically represent that wall erected around her husband, to keep him in check, to hold him in check. Life cannot just be unrestrained Ava. It has to be coupled necessarily with the requisite levels of Yira. One cannot ignore how when we turn to Perkei Avos, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Gimel, Antignish Yisocho Kimam Hem Hu Yomer Al Tiyu Kavodim Hamshamshin Sarav Nas the Kalapras El Av Kavodim Hamshamshin Sarav Shalom Nas the Kalapras. Serve the Eibishter. Why? As the Rambam makes clear in his Perush Novis and other Rishonim, really what the current and the thrust behind Antignish Yisocho is Avos Hashem. Don't serve the Eibishter because you want to get schar. Serve him because you love him. Gavaldige Mishnah and right there, but he doesn't stop. And we have one additional line. And by the way, V'hi Morish Shamayim Aleichem. It seems to be a downer shtickle. I just told you about serving the Eibishter, building on what? An unbelievable Avos Hashem. Serve him not to get anything in return. I get to that high matreg of Avos Hashem, and yet what? He closes his remarks. V'hi Morish Shamayim Aleichem. Why? Because the same way the Nesiv Shalom, the Or Gedayu, and others tell us, the Cheit of Nadav video was, I want to go to the Feiner, I want to get so close close to the Eibishter. I don't need boundaries. I don't need a gevul. I can go what? Shmini. Not coincidentally, yes, the only parsha name for a number is the appropriate context to the Cheit of Nadav and Avihu. They're going Shmini, Shmini Lamayla Menatzav Ha'eit. They're going beyond the border. They're going where they ought not to go. They're driven solely by the Neshama, Osios Shmona, Neshama. They're driven all by what? It's all about Neshama. Then the Eibishter is going to send the Eish, Mida Kenegamida, and suck out the Neshama of the Yipach Ba'ap of Nishmas Chayim and let the Guf stay here. And the Neshama goes heavenward in that Eish as their own Esh. What's Nadav Loshen being Nadav? He wants to give. As Gavaldik you want to give, but you need to have Mor Shamayim Aleichem. Avos Hashem necessarily must always be accompanied by the appropriate levels of Yira Shamayim as well. It's got to be Ava together with Yira. The Asay is rooted in Ava, writes the Ramban in Yisro. The Los Asay is rooted in Yira. You can't just live a life built on Mitzvahs Asay, and necessarily you have to do what? You have to accompany them with the Mitzvahs Los Asay. You have to hold things in check by observing the negative commandments as well, all rooted in the Shorash Inyan of Yira Shamayim. Avram Vina Minas HaChesed, the Nosing, the Mashpia, Yitzchak, Yira, Adin, Gevura. You need to have Vayechu Shneim Yachtov. You need to have the Chesed and the Din together. It needs to be Avram and Yitzchak in order to produce a Yaakov Avinu. You have to have the Chesed and the Ava, but it must be accompanied always by the Yira and by the Gevura. Nadav, he wants to be Menadev. Avihu is what? Avihu, there he is, my father. It's a little too close, Avihu. Avihu, there he is, my father. It's a little too close for comfort. You have to have boundaries. You can't just go and say, let me be with my Tati and Himmel, with Avinu Sheshamayim. You have to make a Gevul, you have to make boundaries. The one thing that Klal Yisrael was warned repeatedly, writes the Chidush Yarim by Maimon HaSinai, was don't get too close. Yishmael, Zok the Chidush Yarim, was tested with what? Lo Sinaf. Difficult for them. They don't want the Torah. Esav, Lo Sirtzov, too difficult. Sefrek the Chidush Yarim. What was the test for Klal Yisrael? Rabbi said, don't climb to the top of the mountain. Because the natural inclination, the penchant for any Erlich Yid is what? I want to climb to the top. I want to be close to Moshe Rabbeinu. I want to get close to God. I want to get to the top of the mountain. Thus, it had to be repeated several times. Right? It's going to show them to drive home into their psyche emphatically. Don't get too close to the mountain. It can't just be about Ava. It's what? The same way. The Torah makes it very clear. Maimon HaSinai is, you're also al Paneichem. It's about the Yira. Who corresponds to Shavuos, Matan Torah, not Yaakov Avinu, the Yom Torah, writes the Torah in Tov Yud Zayin in Orach Chaim, and not Avraham Avinu, the first one to learn and to teach the Torah. Who's connected Shavuos? Yitzchak, because it's got to be Yira. That's what solidifies the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Amela Brachas Chaveis Amad Aleph Malhalan Be'ema Be'yira Bereses Ubezeya. What was the experience? Ayetz, it was the Chasana with the Eibishter. And the Chasana is Gavaldik, a happy time, and it's all about a Haftos Son, writes the Gron the Siddur. Eibishter showed us he loved us, Aidei Matan Torah, and yet what? It is a Haftos Son, and yet at the same time it's a Be'ema Be'yira Bereses Ubezeya. It's not Keneged Avram Avinu's Midas HaChesed, nor Keneged Yaakov's Midas HaRachamim. Yitzchak writes the Torah in Orach Chaim, Tov Yud Zayin, writes the Gron and Ders Leo Parshas Balak. Yitzchak is Keneged the Yantav Shavuos. That's Maimon HaSinai. That's Yira. Nadav and Avihu is what? I want to get close. Shmini L'mayla Menatzava. You got to know that there are boundaries in life. And thus we mentioned, what's the Haftorah for Parsha Shmini Geshmak, the Cheit of Uzzah. What is Uzzah Loshen Azus? The Oren seemingly is now getting a little loose. It might fall off the Agola. It might fall. Uzzah says, I'm going to save the day. I'm going to save the Oren. Uzzah, wake up. The Oren is no sayas nisav. Uzzah Loshen Azus, the boldness, the brazenness. The Oren doesn't need you to save it. The Oren saves itself. It doesn't need to be saved. Uzzah's Loshen Azus. Amela, that's the appropriate Haftarah. Highlights the Lavush Loshen Pater during a Gezeres Hashmad. What's going to take the place of Parsha Shmini? And other than the Cheit of Uzzah. So now it's very Geshmak. Because what do we have in the Haftarah? A diak that I shared with the Olam in the past. And we start out the Haftarah that we just laid in this past week from Shmuel Beis, the Cheit of Uzzah. It says, Vayakivos Oren Elohim al Agala Chadosha. Avayis, when they carried him in Beis Avinadav Asher Begiva. V'Uzzah v'Achil b'nei Avinadav Nogim es Agala Chadosha. They were leading that Agala. Avayis in Beis Avinadav. Did Avinadav do anything in the whole story? By the way, he does nothing. And yet the Navi tells us twice in one pasuk, 3 times in 2, adjacent recent psukim that the Aaron came from Beis Avi Nadav, but he didn't do anything in the story. And what about Uzzah's brother, by the way? You know what his brother's name was? Uzzah and Achio. Did Achio do anything in the story? No. So my nafkamina. What do I need Avi Nadav? What do I need Achio? Feiner, it's very geschmack. What's the Torah for Parsha Shmini? For the Cheit of Nadav and Avihu. Uzzah was a later day echo of the Cheit of Nadav and Avihu, going beyond the invisible threshold that you can't cross. Uzzah says, Azus, I can go. I'm going to save the day. I'm going to rescue the Aaron. I'm going to go michutz l'gevul. I'm going to go where I'm not supposed to go. And Tequila, the portable Kodesh HaKadoshim of the Aaron. I'm going to go where I'm not supposed to go. And that's Uzzah Loshen Azus. And the Navi wants us to know it's a later day Cheit, an echo of the earlier day Nadav and Avihu Cheit. What's my raya? Uzzah and Achio. Achio, that means what? Turn your attention to Achim. Which Achim? Avi Nadav, Nadav Avihu. You can't ignore that. Avi Nadav 3 times. Nadav Avihu. Uzzah and Achio. Uzzah did what? Achio, the Achim of Avi Nadav. Avi Nadav, Nadav and Avihu. Our Rabbi said, I didn't see anyone who talks about it, but we're introduced to Uzzah, and his name is spelled Ayin Zayin Aleph. That's how he's appearing in Pasuk Gimel and Shmuel Beis and Perek Vav. Uzzah spelled Ayin Zayin Aleph, and then all of a sudden what happens? Vayishlach Uzzah, he does his Cheit, and right after he does the Cheit, Vayichav Hashem Uzzah, Hashem gets angry. He did something wrong, and all of a sudden the Navi changes his name. He's not Ayin Zayin Aleph anymore. He now is Ayin Zayin Hey, and nobody talks about it. Why is he Ayin Zayin Hey? The Feiner, the new name with the Hey is Gematria Ima Kolel Nadav and Avihu 82 and 81. We had to change his name. Why? To be Margish. As the new Uzzah did what? He did an echo of the Cheit of Nadav and Avihu of going beyond the border. Uzzah, Gematria, Nadav plus Avihu. That's the Shmini of last week's Parsha. Eibishter says, you know what the Tikun is? Tikun is, let's turn the pages to the beginning narrative. The opening segment of this week's Parshas Tazria. Now let's go back to Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu, of course, is the one who brought down Bris Milah to this world. The Ramban writes in Emor, the very lofty musag of the Shem Yisrael came into the world. Al Yadei Avram Avinu's Bris Milah. Then and only then was he called the Tamid. Bris Milah. Now this is a Pella. Avram Avinu remembers the first one, who not only begins the whole era of Torah, Vodazor Daf Tes and Hechon Tzadi Zion, he begins the era of Torah, but he's the first one, writes the Mishnah Kedushin Pebeisim and Aleph, and the Gemara, the parallel Sugin Yuma Chavches and Beis, Avram Avinu Kiyam as Kol HaTorah Kula Kodem Shenina. The first person to keep Kol HaTorah Kula. Writes the Gemara, Afila Eruve Chatzeris, Afila Eruve Tavshilin, different nuschos, the Gra and others discuss. He kept side the Daraisa, side the Rabbanans, Avram Avinu, the Rosh Hashanah. He kept God's Tayyig Mitzvahs. He's putting on tefillin, he's sitting in a sukkah, he's eating the Pesach. Avram Avinu is doing everything except for one thing. There's one thing he's not doing. I can't give himself a bris milah until the tzivoy comes into the world. Many different perushim. Hashem was a megala the soda bris milah to Avram Avinu, or yes, he knew about it, but if he would do a bris milah, once you do a bris milah, you can't do it again. Hamela will lose the opportunity to be a mitzvah v'yosa, or the whole mitzvah bris milah is only once he's an orel. He's not an orel until he's given the tzivoy. There are over 100 different answers to the question. Avram Avinu, you're keeping everything. In the end of the day, whatever answer you want to espouse. At the end of the day, what do we have over here? A Yid who starts out the Tkuf of Torah, who wants nothing more but to be Mekayim every Asay and every Los Asay, not only the Deraisis with the Rabbanans. He loves the mitzvahs, and you know what? There's only one mitzvah he can't do. Out of all Tayyig mitzvahs, and not Stam a mitzvah, but bris, Gematria 612, bris equal one of the Zayim mitzvahs, Shkulas. It's equal to all the remaining 612, and for whatever reason, at the end of the day, you can't do it. Can you imagine? You're a Yid who wants to do every mitzvah in the world. It's the same way. How do you understand the Gemara Chagiga on Yadal Ladal and Nichnasu Lepardes? And the only one who was Nichnas and Yotze B'Sholem is Rabbi Akiva. Ben Zoma Ben Azai Elisha Ben. They all get this one. Nivka. What's Rabbi said? These are the Gedolei Ador. You know why? Because you know what? If you're a Gedolei Ador in the Tkufa of the Tanoim, what do you want more than anything in life? I want to know Ma'aseh Bereshis. I want to know Ma'aseh Merkava. They had Kol Torah Kulu Chokma Shabolam in the fingertips. The biggest Nisayan. How do you understand Sukkot and Beis? Abraham Yitzchak. Kol Godam Echav. What do you Yitzhak get? They don't want pizza and ice cream. They don't need steak. They don't need nourishkeit. They don't need clowns and carnivals. What do they need? That taivas achila, taivas noshim, taivas mammon. No, you know what they want? They want to know everything. I know what a Yetzer Hara it is to be a Vilna Gaon and to know you can't delve too deeply into Ma'aseh Merkava and to Ma'aseh Bereishis. You see, the greatest Gedolei Yisrael, except for Rabbi Akiva, they couldn't be Nichnas and Yatz V'Sholem because they wanted to know all the pardes. They wanted to know all the secrets of the universe. Can't imagine what the Yetzer Hara is. Can you imagine then go back to not only the Tanam, go back to Avram Avinu. And he's got all the Torah mitzvahs on his fingertips. And all he wants to do is Milah, and he can't. Can you imagine? What's that all about? Avram, who is the Midah of Chesed, who wants to give, who wants to do every assay in the world. There's only one assay that he just can't do. And you know what? He's got to hold himself back. Bris Milah was the first mitzvah that Avram Avinu wanted to do that he couldn't do for whatever reason. Out of all Torah mitzvahs, he wanted so much to be Mashlim, the big 613. And there's one that's kilo off limits. But you know what? That's it. I'm not going to question the Ribono Shalom. If I can't do it now, then I can't do it. How long are you going to? Avram Avinu has to wait until he's 99 years old. 99 years old before he can do the one remaining mitzvah. Here he is. He is Makiris Paro either at 3, at 40, at 48, or at 54 Shittas in Chazal. Can you imagine he's waiting over 50 years, half a century, over 50 years according to all the Shittas, according to close to 100. And he's got all Torah mitzvahs under his belt with this one. And he's got to hold himself back. He wants to do, but he knows he can't. He wasn't given the tzivoy. This one I got to wait for. The Yom HaShmini, that's Bris Milah. He's got to wait for the Feiner state. You know what the Tikun is for the Bayom HaShmini and Nadav Nevi'u went beyond the Gvul. Eibush, I love you so much. I'm just going to go the Fnai L'Fnei B'Makim Ne'isora. Bayom HaShmini, I'm going to go the Ma'alat. You know what the Tikun is? Bayom HaShmini Yimam Basar Allah. So Avram Avinu waited by Bris Milah. He waited close to 100 years. He so much wanted to do it, but he held himself in check. Parents bring a newborn Ben Zachar into the world. They love the child. They want to give him one Kedushas Yisrael. Who can wait over a week? Who can wait until they don't ready to see the beautiful child right now? You want to give him a bris milah? You can't. Why? You got to wait. Patience. Patience. You got to wait to a Shabbos. You got to wait to 8. Now waiting that yira, holding myself in check, waiting until the Eibishter tells me it's the time to do this Ma'aseh Mitzvah. That Bayom HaShmini is the Tikun of the Bayom HaShmini and Nadav Nevi'u. And that's why I hold back the Azus. I say we don't make the decisions. We wait for God to tell us when it's the right time, when it's the right place. The Bayom HaShmini Yimsolosa taught Avram Avinu, and he teaches us every single day. Eibishter, you got to tell us, we got to be in check. It's not just about Alva. It's about Alva coupled with Yira, the Bayom HaShmini of this week's Parsha. As a Tikun, perhaps, to the Bayom HaShmini, a Parsha Shmini. Have a wonderful night.